evening, I'm Samantha Bardis in Hong Kong and welcome to ViuTV News. Coming up on tonight's show. Politicians demand the resignation of Transport Minister Frank Chan over the MTR Works scandal. Ramped up trade tariffs aren't hurting China just yet. Asia's biggest economy is actually exporting more goods than analysts expected. And fall from grace for Malaysia's former Prime Minister, Najib Razak, hit with money laundering charges. First this evening, the growing fallout from the Sha Tin Central Link building works scandal. A group of politicians is demanding the resignation of Secretary for Transport and Housing, Frank Chan. Members of the Labor Party, League of Social Democrats and other groups marched from the Admiralty Centre to Tamar. They say the Sha Tin Central Link construction went through a lot of corner cutting and called it a tofu drag project, a phrase used to describe shoddy building works. The protesters say they also want MTR Chairman Frederick Ma to step down. Separately, a lawmaker is raising questions about the timing of the summer holiday MTR contractor Leighton Asia has granted to its executive in charge of the project. Citing documents obtained from a source, Lam Chuk Ting said Leighton's Raymond David Brewster was permitted to go on 1-month leave from the end of July. Brewster is Leighton's authorised signatory for the construction at Hong Ham Station. That means he's the person who signs off all the works there. The legislator pointed out that Brewster took off right after the government found fault in MTR's drawing plans in mid-July, saying the timing is suspicious.
The company should ask all the person in charge to stay and fully explain the matter to the general public and the MTR and the government. It is very dubious and unreasonable for Leighton to grant the leave application to Mr. Brewster in this critical moment.
The Hong Kong Institution of Engineers, meanwhile, says it welcomes the government's swift actions. The group stressed that it will take disciplinary action against its members if they are found to be involved in dishonest or fraudulent activities. The institution's president, Phil Ko Wong, is also MTR's project director who just resigned over the scandal. Well, let's dig into the repercussions and fallout of this MTR shake-up. We're now joined by Richard Soy from the local transport watchdog. Richard, there's growing pressure on the Secretary for Transport and Housing to step down now. Should we hold him as a government official accountable as well?
I think in general, the Secretary should be held accountable. But whether this scandal actually he should step down or he need to take some responsibility, like some kind of punishment. I think it's first the government, the chief executive, need to decide and make an explanation to the general public. And the main contractor, Leighton Asia, has largely stayed quiet throughout this whole thing. It now appears that one of the executives in charge of the Hong Ham Station project is now on leave, just as all this is sort of starting to blow up. Should Leighton be under more scrutiny, do you think? Definitely. But of course, I think the Hong Kong people should ask the government to take the lead. And also the government to first push the MTRC to have a closely monitor and accountable to everything, because the contractor actually is employed by the MTRC. So I think the Hong Kong people should ask the MTRC to do the things and to fix the things well. And it's nearly been 3 months since the Sha Tin to Central Rail debacle emerged. Why did these resignations take so long? Of course, this happened back in May. We heard about this. I think the office is the problem, both for the government and the MTRC, who actually in the past failed to recognize it is really a tragedy, a scandal. they try to hide the things, especially the MTRC. So I think it's up to the point that the government and the MTRC cannot hide the things so long. Obviously, Hong Kong people want to see the things be more accountable in the earlier stage. But I think it's now the government and the MTRC to try their best in the near future to fix everything and to try to make a proposal for the improvement in the future.
Absolutely. I think that the public have a right to know. And sort of what guarantees do you think are there that this MTR board shake-up will actually lead to positive changes?
I think firstly, MTRC should come up with a concrete evaluation and improvement plan to, of course, make public and ask whether the Hong Kong people, the general public, accept that proposal. And secondly, I think the whole structure of the MTRC, even whether it should maintain as a private company without the government's full monitoring, it should also be reviewed. One of the ways is to make MTRC to become a government public body back again. That would be maybe more accountable in the future.
And just very quickly, naturally, obviously, the MTR's reputation has been dealt a major blow. What can MTR and the Hong Kong government now do to win back public confidence?
I think first is to, for this scandal, this issue should be a thorough evaluation, especially some external evaluation to take into account the whole things and to make some improvement. And secondly, the MTRC, I think, should make some real changes, like to make some improvement to the person transport services and even fare mechanism, and to make the general public feel it would be accountable to the Hong Kong people.
Some very important points you make. Thank you, Richard Soy.
Thank you.
Coming up next, the latest from the world of business. Well, after roaring onto the IPO scene with billions of dollars, China Tower debuted here in the city with a whimper. By the closing bell, its share price was back where it started at $1.26. The escalating US-China trade spat weighing on investor sentiment toward the world's biggest IPO in 2 years. China Tower's performance could now influence upcoming listings like Sinochem. Cathay Pacific has narrowed its first half loss, saying it was helped by a weaker US dollar. The airline was $263 million in the red between January and June this year. That's an improvement from 2017's disastrous results. Cathay says the expectation is for an even better second half, but higher fuel costs could cut into revenues. For the moment, it appears China is shrugging off any trade war fears. Asia's biggest economy released better than expected export figures for July. That's as the US announced it will begin collecting 25% tariffs on another $16 billion in Chinese goods on August 23rd. Grace Lee reports.
Semiconductors, electronics, and railway equipment. These are just some of the high-tech imports from China that are about to be hit with a new round of U.S. tariffs in just 2 weeks. On Tuesday, the U.S. unveiled its next list of targets in a running trade war with Beijing. It'll begin collecting a 25% tariff on another $16 billion of products starting August 23rd. It raises the stakes after Donald Trump's initial tariffs on $34 billion in goods last month, with Beijing hitting back in kind. The latest $16 billion list will hit semiconductors from China, even though many of the basic chips in these products come from the US, Taiwan, or South Korea. The US is targeting goods that it says benefited from a Made in China 2025 industrial plan aimed at making China competitive in high-tech industries. Trump has been optimistic, saying in a tweet on Sunday that tariffs are working, quote, big time. But Chinese state media says that's wishful thinking. And on Wednesday, official numbers showed that China's exports rose more than expected in the first picture of the country's economy since the tariffs.
Despite wider trade tension fears casting a long shadow over the region, Hong Kong shares continue to trek up. The Hang Seng Index closed up 0.39%, consumer and tech stocks outperforming, with Tencent among the biggest movers of the day. Deep losses were again the story in China, though, the Shanghai Composite slipping 1.27%. Well, Tesla's boss Elon Musk has sent investors into a tailspin. In a series of tweets, the billionaire suggested he might take his car company private, and at a record high share price. Jane Lee has the latest.
Another bombshell from Tesla CEO Elon Musk Tuesday, coming, of course, on Twitter. Musk tweeting him considering taking Tesla private at $420, funding secured. The announcement, which would mean Tesla would offer to buy back all publicly traded shares at that price, started a stampede into the stock as buyers rushed in for what they hoped would be an easy ride to that $420 mark. NASDAQ briefly halted trading. At the end of the session, Tesla soared by about 11%, closing at nearly $380. But Tesla later posted an email from Musk to employees on its website saying a final decision hasn't been made and that shareholders had to vote for it. Reuters correspondent Alexandria Sage.
Certainly, Elon Musk has faced an intense period of public scrutiny this past year. A lot of this was because of the manufacturing challenges, the production hell that Elon Musk acknowledged himself that its Model 3 was undergoing. And by going private, this would alleviate a lot of that public focus, the finger pointing, the pleasing investors on a quarterly basis.
At $420 a share, Tesla would be valued at $72 billion. Musk hasn't disclosed the source of the funding to go from public to private. He owns nearly 20% of the company.
Well, despite uncertainties about Tesla's finances, one thing is certain: demand for electric vehicles is soaring. That surge, especially in markets such as China and Hong Kong, is reigniting a mining boom in Australia. Ed Giles explains.
Nickel is the new gold rush, out here in Western Australia's desert. Global miner BHP says it's set on investing into exploring for nickel, and it's all because of the new global drive towards electric vehicles. That demand for EVs and the raw materials needed to propel them could be the start of a renewed gold rush for Australia's mining industry.
As people are moving more towards buying electric vehicles or EVs like Tesla, we're seeing greater demand for rechargeable batteries. And Australia is a major supplier of materials for the electric vehicle boom. Australia has or is producing half the world's lithium and also nickel. In fact, BHP is building one of the world's largest nickel chemical plants just outside of Perth.
Nickel is almost as important to EVs as petroleum is to their gas-driven cousins. Using more nickel in batteries means that cars can travel further on a single charge. BHP says its new nickel chemical plant near Perth will come online in April next year. After a downturn for Australia's mining industry, the new rush to battery materials like nickel could mean better times are on their way back.
Time for a short break now, but stay with us. Up next, legal pressure mounts on Malaysia's embattled former Prime Minister Najib Razak.
We enrage, we envy, we resent, we dislike.
We breathe, we laugh, we cry, we live.
We disappoint, we frustrate, we bore, we suffer.
We fear, we doubt, we defeat, we empower.
We communicate,
we talk,
we listen,
we learn,
we care. Jazzing up,
touching hearts,
paying attention,
seemingly distant,
deeply connected.
No food.
Need some food.
No shelter.
I have to build up my shelter.
No fresh water.
There we go. I need this.
No tools.
This I can make use of.
No camera crew.
There's just not enough to gather here. There's not enough to hunt.
Just one man alone in the wilderness, surviving. Survivor Man. Tonight at 8:30 on ViuTV6. Take a trip to the land down under. Behind every native animal surviving in the wild.
Can we talk about this?
Or the furry babies living in different households.
This is a massive open gash. I don't think at positioning it's too bad.
There's a dedicated veterinary team.
That's just such a good result.
Because animal lives matter.
Look after my girl.
Thank you so much.
Bondi Vet. Friday, Saturday and Sunday night at 8 on ViuTV6. Veteran Coach.
很多学生可能会冲着我而去。
New Coach on the Block.
我将会用音乐和你们认真玩。
Sing China. Friday night at 9. Live on Channel 96 ViuTV6. The best non-fiction features.
Everybody very afraid to walk alone in the street.
It's very hard for Americans actually to go to Cuba. They don't want you to go there, even today.
New ways to engage reality.
The whole process is a life lesson for the kids. They see the evolution.
It could be the same, it could be something different. You know, it's really how you take it and what you learn from when you lose.
Transforming your 1 hour TV time into an exceptional cinematic experience. Theatre 96. Sunday night at 9:30 on ViuTV6. 16 national teams face off in France for the ultimate prize in the women's youth football. The FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup France 2018 semi-finals. August 20th. Live on ViuTV and ViuTV6.
Welcome back. More local news now, and an anti-independence group known as Real Hong Kongers View has staged a protest outside the Foreign Correspondents Club demanding it cancel a planned talk by Hong Kong National Party's convener Andy Chan. The group held banners and placards saying respect China's sovereignty and no room to discuss Hong Kong independence. Its spokesperson said freedom of speech comes with conditions and cannot destroy others' right to enjoy social stability and harmony. The group said it will take further action if the FCC goes ahead with the talk. Chief Secretary for Administration Matthew Chung met with Green groups today for the upcoming policy address. The group said the government should first utilise land it has, such as brownfields in the new territories, instead of reclamation and developing country parks. They were also against a proposed development plan to build an East Lantau metropolis by reclaiming more than 2,000 hectares of land, worried that there will be delays and overspending with such large-scale projects. Retired Superintendent Franklin Chu appeared in court today for his appeal against his assault conviction and 3-month jail term for hitting a bystander with his police baton during the Occupy protests in 2014. There were supporters as well as protesters outside the High Court, where his lawyer played a video and wished to submit it as new evidence. The prosecutor, though, doubted the authenticity of the video and whether it could justify Chu's behaviour to use his baton to disperse a charging crowd. In Malaysia, former Prime Minister Najib Razak has been charged with 3 counts of money laundering. This is linked to an investigation into missing money from the state fund known as 1MDB. Najib has been accused of embezzling $10 million. He's pleaded not guilty to all of the charges and was released after posting bail. Our regional correspondent, Sandy Huang, is in Singapore covering this story for us.
While the legal pressure is certainly mounting on Najib, he was arrested last month and has already been charged with criminal breach of trust and abuse of power. Each of those charges carry a maximum prison sentence of up to 15 years and a fine of not less than 5 times the proceeds of the illegal activity. Najib and his family have allegedly pocketed huge sums of money from the state fund to buy everything from artwork to high-end properties around the world. Najib has always denied those accusations and was cleared by Malaysian authorities during his time in power. But the tides have turned since his shock election defeat to his former mentor-turned-foe, Mahathir Mohamad. The new prime minister reopened investigations and barred Najib and his wife from leaving the country. Raids have been carried out in recent weeks in Najib's properties, and police say the seizure of valuables was the biggest ever in Malaysian history. 1MDB is now being investigated by at least 6 countries, including Singapore, Switzerland, and the United States. Billions of dollars are still unaccounted for. Najib's trial dates will be set on Friday. The court will also hear his application for a permanent gag order to prevent public discussion of the merits of the case.
In neighbouring Indonesia, the death toll from Sunday's earthquake in Lombok has topped 100 people. Thousands others are still waiting for emergency aid. Rescuers have been working around the clock to uncover victims buried underneath collapsed buildings. Authorities say close to 5,000 foreign and domestic tourists have been evacuated from the nearby Gili Islands. Survivors in the worst affected areas of Lombok are in desperate need of clean water, food, medicine and shelter. US President Donald Trump has called the latest penalties against Iran the most biting sanctions ever imposed. In a tweet, the president added that the countries that do business with Tehran won't be able to do the same with the US. Trump claims these measures are for world peace. The US dropped out of an international accord with Iran earlier this year, which was meant to stem the country's nuclear program. Canada is asking for help from the United Arab Emirates and the UK to cool its dispute with Saudi Arabia. Washington, however, has made it clear it won't get involved. Ottawa's call for the release of human rights activists in the kingdom has infuriated Riyadh. Saudi authorities today stopped all medical treatment programs in Canada, on top of freezing trade and investment deals with the country. It's a revelation that's shining a light on how Japanese women still face an uphill battle in the workplace. The director of a Tokyo medical school has had to publicly apologise after it emerged the scores of women's entry exams were deliberately cut. The university's internal investigation found the practice had been going on for at least a decade. Lucy Fielder has the details. Time to switch gears and get the latest from the world of sports. We start with tennis, and Wimbledon champion Novak Djokovic began his bid for a 5th Rogers Cup title win against Mirza Basic in Toronto. Djokovic was due to play Hyun Chung, but the South Korean pulled out with injury. The world number 10 was made to work for his win and served a double fault, so the second set to a tie-break, but he came through 6-3, 7-6. Earlier in the day, Stan Wawrinka fought back to beat Australian Nick Kyrgios. Kyrgios took control early on, taking the first set 6-1. But Wawrinka bounced back in the second set and broke Kyrgios in the final game of the third to take the match 1-6, 7-5, 7-5. Turning to football and the potential takeover at Arsenal, American billionaire Stan Kroenke is set to take full control of the English Premier League club after Russian tycoon and minority holder Alisher Usmanov agreed to sell. Kroenke currently owns 67% of Arsenal and has offered to buy up the rest of the shares. The agreement values the North London club at $2.3 billion. Kroenke says having a single owner would benefit the club, but fans said it was a dreadful day. The Gunners are also adjusting to life after Arsene Wenger, who left the club in May after 22 years in charge. Arsenal play Manchester City in their season opener on Sunday. Meanwhile, Usain Bolt's dream of becoming a professional footballer has moved up a notch after earning an indefinite trial at Australia's Central Coast Mariners. The 8-times Olympic champion will train for as long as it takes to become pro and has agreed to reside at the club's sleepy home base. The 31-year-old Jamaican will not be guaranteed a professional contract at the club, but says he wants to prove that with hard work, anything is possible. That's it for now. Join us again at 11:30 for an update on the stories that are shaping your world. I'm Samantha Vardis and this is ViuTV News. Bye for now.